United Chinese Americans of Washington State's march and rally to remember the 136th anniversary of the Seattle Chinese expulsion of 1886. In February 1886, an angry mob forced over to flee their homes. Unfortunately, 136 years later, Asian American communities are under attack, facing increasing hate and racially motivated violence. As a woman who is Black and Asian, I am acutely aware of how it feels to be erased or ignored. How the default position when violence is committed against our communities is to defer from confronting hate, which is often sadly the motivation. Words matter. Leadership matters. We must all loudly condemn actions and language rooted in fear and bigotry that harm all of us. While this has no doubt been a difficult time for members of our AAPI community, I have also witnessed firsthand the courage of our brothers and sisters who are standing up, organizing, and coming together to speak out and protect members of our community. 1/3 of Americans have witnessed someone blaming Asian Americans for the COVID virus. 8 out of 10 AAPI youth report being bullied or verbally harassed due to their race. Elderly Asian Americans are being assaulted, tragically resulting in unnecessary deaths. Online hate speech and cyberbullying against Asians has increased by 900% during the pandemic. We must address this rising hate. Name-calling, shunning, and assault were among nearly 3,800 hate incidents reported against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders nationwide last year. That's why events like today are so incredibly important. Today's rally and march will draw attention to the Chinese expulsion and its modern forms, so they will never be repeated with newer generations, regardless of national origin. It will also celebrate over 150 years of political, economic, and cultural contributions Chinese Americans have made to Washington State. Thank you for attending today's anniversary, and thank you for giving me the honor to be here with you today.
大使罗家辉大使来给我们致辞。今天我们有非常的有幸，请到我们的骆大使来，有请我们的骆大使。
Well, thank you very much for being here. 136 years ago, the Chinese in what was Chinatown, a few blocks away, were rounded up, taken down to the docks, and shipped away and kicked out of Seattle. And not just in Seattle, but in Tacoma, in Olympia, and many other cities across the West Coast. Why? Because they feared the competition and the work by Chinese Americans. And yet through it all, over the last 136 years, Chinese Americans have fought in the United States Army in World War II, have invented some of the great medicines that have saved lives in America and around the world, have formed companies that have employed millions and millions of people in America, and have served in government, in finance, in colleges and universities, and simply doing all kinds of things. And yes, I said they served in the military, like my father, who was part of World War II, was part of the Normandy invasion, and was involved in some of the most vicious, intense, bloodiest battles of World War II. And not just Asian Americans and Chinese Americans, but so many people of color have given their blood, sweat, and tears for this country. Why is it that Japanese American soldiers became the most decorated military unit in U.S. military history, even though their mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters were in concentration camps, internment camps during World War II? Why were there African American soldiers who came from segregated communities fighting for America? And the same thing with Native Americans who came from impoverished, very poor reservations, giving their blood, sweat, and tears for America, even though they all suffered discrimination back home, because they believed in the ultimate goodness and future of America. And we as Chinese Americans and Asian Americans have every right indeed a responsibility to be active members of our community because we care about our communities and we care about our future. We were kicked out of Seattle 136 years ago. And we say, well, it won't happen again. But it is happening again. It is happening again when they say it's the Kung Flu virus, the China virus, the Wuhan virus, and all of you need to go back home. This is our home. And we got people in elected office in the city of Bellevue and the city of Seattle and an Asian American mayor. We need more Asian Americans, Chinese Americans involved in politics to remind everyone else that we are 100% American. We care about America. This is our home and we want to improve it and make sure that it's a great place to live, work, and raise a family for our children and future generations. You all need to be active. You need to vote. You need to let people know that we matter, we count, and we are American. Thank you very much.
國議員 Adam Smith 給我們支持，而家係有請我哋嘅美國國議員同我哋支持，有請 Adam Smith。
Thank you very much. It is great to be here in Chinatown, and more than anything, it is great to see so many people out. The vibrance of this community is inspiring to see. It has been a brutally difficult couple of years for a lot of different reasons for the entire country, but especially for Asian Americans, for all the reasons that Governor Locke outlined so clearly. The history of this country is the history of a fundamental contradiction. On the one hand, our diversity is clearly our strength. People from all over the world come here because they want to work hard and build a better life for themselves and their families. And the Chinese American community have been leaders in that for the history of this country. And we see it here in the Seattle-Puget Sound region. We are a better community and a stronger community because of the contributions of Chinese Americans in every conceivable aspect of our lives, in education, in political leadership, in business, in fighting for this country. We see that, and at the same time, we have the history that the expulsion shows, a history of racism and bigotry against those very people that are making our community better and stronger. And we've seen it in the last couple of years to a tragic level, as we've seen bigotry against Asian Americans as a result of the coronavirus. What we have to do as Americans is fight against the bad and fight for the good. Fight to be inclusive, fight to recognize how diversity strengthens this community for all of us, and stand up against hate, stand up against bigotry, stand up against anybody who chooses to judge people in a negative way because of that diversity. They are here, there is no doubt about it. But I will tell you, they are in the minority. The majority of this country, the majority of the people understand the importance of diversity and will fight to protect the rights of all of us. I'm committed to you. I will do that as your congressman here representing this area. I could not be prouder of the diversity of this district, of this community, of this region. We need to fight to protect it, fight to protect people, make sure everybody's rights are respected. Live up to the best parts of this country, not the worst parts. Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you, and I really look forward to continuing to work with you.
女士们、先生们，接下来我们是有请金县的行政长官 Don Constantine。那么在上一年的时候，我们 Mr. Constantine 呢，已经是给我们发表了声明，让我们更加的知道，种族歧视是一个非常大的社会危机。在这里呢，我们感謝我們的 Constantine 先生給我們上一年做出來的聲明。而家係有請我哋今獻嘅行政長官同我哋致辭嘅。咁咧喺上一年咧，我哋嘅行政長官咧已經係發表聲明，俾大家知道咧種族歧視咧係一個社會最大嘅危機。有請我哋嘅行政長官。
Thank you. And yes, it's great to see such a good turnout here today because we're gathering for something that's quite solemn, really. We're here to remind ourselves of a deeply shameful moment in the history of this city, this county, this region, and state. Can you imagine an angry mob showing up at your house, a place where you're working to raise your kids, working to earn a living, maybe showing up at your business, and physically forcing you out, forcing you to march to the docks, telling you you have to get on a boat and leave your home, and leave your business, and leave everything you've built behind you, illegally imprisoning you, illegally attempting to deport you. That happened here in our city 136 years ago. We are here today to remind our community of that, so that we understand that we have an affirmative responsibility to drive out hate, to drive out division, to make sure nothing like that can happen again. During these past 2 years of this global pandemic, everyone has, in some way, been impacted, in some way, suffered. But Asian and Pacific Islander residents of our community and of this country have been singled out for attacks, singled out for abuse, singled out by people who wish to blame and divide and other, singled out because of racism. And we gathered right here to say, no, we will not stand for it in our community. We will stop Asian hate. And we will continue to stand against racism. We will continue to stand against ignorance. We will continue to stand against violence in our community and in our country. And when we do, we will honor the memory of those Chinese residents of this region who in 1886 stood in the face of a hateful mob and said, no, this is our place, this is our home, these are our families, these are our businesses. From the very beginning, the Chinese community has been central to the culture and the economy of Seattle and King County and Washington State, and so it will ever be. There can be no room for othering. There can be no room for an idea that there is an us and a them. There is no them. There is only us. We are all us. And King County must be a place where we, collectively, old-timers and newcomers alike, can be fully, equally welcome. Where each can live our life free of hate, free of violence, and with a full opportunity to thrive and fulfill our potential in this life. Thank you for honoring our history. Thank you for reminding the next generations of what happened here, that it might never happen again. And thank you for joining us as we work together toward a better, stronger, and more just community. Thank you.
Stop Asian hate! Stop Asian hate! Stop Asian hate! Stop Asian hate! You don't play Simon Says very well. So community and family, we have a choice to make. We can look back into the history, a history that the city of Seattle, and I'm joined with Chief Adrian Diaz, the Seattle Police Department, supported a policy 136 years ago of the Exclusion Act. We were complicit in that effort. That is a bad chapter in Seattle's history. So what did we learn? We learned one simple lesson. You can't exclude Chinese. Let me repeat that. You cannot exclude them because this community is too vibrant. We work too hard. We love too hard. We believe in our community. We believe in our families. You cannot exclude us even if you try. I would like to hear a round of applause on that. And make no mistake, as the City of Seattle Mayor, we have an obligation to protect you, to make sure that these businesses are vibrant, that you can walk down a sidewalk and not have to walk around anybody. So we are working right now on building the systems to protect you, to make sure your businesses are vibrant, that our young people are safe. I asked the chief here, and the chief knows in the last few weeks we've worked very feverishly on making sure our plans are complete. That if someone needs treatment, we will get them treated. If someone needs to be off the streets, we'll take them off the streets. And so you will see very tangible, real action here, quite frankly, in just a matter of days and weeks. But we had to build systems in place, systems of which we have built through strong leaders, many of whom are of Asian American descent on part of our leadership team. I asked Chef Diaz, and many of you don't, I called you chef, do you cook? Are you a chef too? He cooks on the side actually. I asked Chef Diaz, Chief Diaz, who, by the way, many of you don't know, he has a history in wrestling. He's coached for 16 years. He's competed internationally. He'd asked me, he said, don't say what weight class I wrestled in. And I took judo since I was 9 years old, and we all know judo is superior to wrestling. But in all seriousness, that his directive from me has been to protect you. And I'm gonna let him share a few words about what we're doing and his experience and his commitment to you and about our history. And then I'll close this out with just a comment. Chief Diaz, let's clap for him.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. This is, we're remembering one of the darkest moments in Seattle history. 136 years ago, our Seattle police officers were involved in the cubic air ordinance of trying to expel some of our Chinese Americans and our Chinese community. And it's unacceptable that we have that history. We have not always been on the right side of history, but that has changed, and that is changing, and is continuing for my commitment to ensure that we are a compassionate, equitable police department, that everything that you are doing in your day, that we're addressing the crime, that your businesses aren't getting broken into, that your cars aren't getting proud, that the shootings are not occurring in your community. We are putting exactly what the mayor said, we are putting the resources and all the programs in place to address these issues. And I'm committed to making sure, please, every day our officers are recovering guns off the streets. We are committed to making sure that this is the safest community that we have in our city. And I'm here to stand with you. Thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chief. I will close my part by saying, look at the leadership, the political and civic and business leadership you have assembled here. Look at the leadership you have here from all levels of government, even from the east side. So the choice is, do we lead with hate? Do we lead with exclusion? No, we don't. We lead with love. We lead with love. That's why we can't be excluded. We love our community. We love this country. We see these flags around here. So our story will be told, and I need to thank all of you for electing me. Where's Asuta? I know who helped get me in office. Wasn't born yesterday. Thank you, community. We're in this with you, and so is our collective leadership. Thank you very much.
Bellevue has a very strong "Hate Has No Home Here" campaign, but it's not something that we bring out just at a rally or at a march. It's something we have to work on every single day, because in reality, there are more people who love than hate, and we give people the opportunity to feel that they are empowered to hate when we keep our voices quiet and we don't keep that strong campaign going. So every day, I want you to know that the Bellevue City Council, our chief of police, our city manager, our entire City of Bellevue staff stand in solidarity with you in our "Hate Has No Home Here" campaign, and we support our Asian community and value them very much. So thank you so much for coming out here today. I'm really proud to be part of this, and I just thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Deputy Mayor Nieuwenhuis.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, and so great to see so many faces out here today. Thank you. I'm honored to be here, to be a part of this remembrance, even though it is a solemn one. But in Bellevue, we always say our diversity is our strength, and we'll continue that pledge for as long as the city is the city of Bellevue. But I just want to add on to some of the great comments and speeches that have been made here this afternoon. Never forget. Don't forget. Don't just remember on today, remember always, because what happened 136 years ago can happen again if you do forget, and if you do not call out atrocities, if you do not call out hate when you see it, when you hear it. So that's my pledge to you, is that I will always do that when I see it, because that's the only way you stop it from ever happening again. Again, thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. It's an honor. Thank you so much. I think I'll now turn it over to Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I'm Bellevue City Council Member Conrad Lee. It's such a great pleasure to be here. It's so wonderful to hear so many people, so much support from all over the region, from our elected officials. I want to particularly point out our former governor, Gary Locke, for his speech, for his history about how we, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, all Americans, must stand together, must call this place our home and have a place that we belong. So, I just want to say, I prepared a few words to say. We open every council meeting with reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, which includes the word, "One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." This is the creed of our nation, the United States of America. As an immigrant myself and naturalized citizen, I'm blessed to call this country home and where I belong. So are so many other immigrants, as many of you, your parents are immigrants, that make this country home. And we're very proud, I'm proud, when I saw Nathan Chen, the son of immigrant parents, standing under Star-Spangled Banner, representing the best of this country in the Winter Olympic. Isn't it great? So why are we here today? We are here to join our brothers and sisters, to join those of us who are still not being treated equally, to remind us, and despite the progress made by our black brothers and sisters, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. over 50 years ago, we still have a long way to go. Chinese Americans have suffered and endured prejudices, injustice over the years, like have been talked about, mentioned, including this expulsion that we've suffered. We are stereotyped still and portrayed over the years as coolies and uncivilized and untrustworthy and feared caricatures. Whether good or bad, stereotypes still remains today. Today, immigrants are still called aliens. You know, I remember when I first came to this country, when I said, well, I'm an alien. So I saw the TV series called My Uncle Martian. I was trying to figure out where my antenna is from my head. So I think we must change that type of stereotypes. We must tell our Chinese American stories. The hardships early Chinese Americans faced and endured. The discrimination against us as late as 1960s when I came here, until the Civil Rights Act was enacted. We must tell the contributions Chinese Americans have made and are making still today as lawyers, doctors, engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, and even elected representatives. These stories will let others and even ourselves know who we are, what we have done for this country, and that we are integral part of the fabric and history of this country. This is also our home, like Governor Gary Locke said. And we have to belong. We belong as equals and will continue to contribute and working together with everyone. So for the future and generations to come, we will be part of the American people that complete the American dream. One day our country will truly be our one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's easy to give lip service to equality and justice. It's easy to talk the talk. We must act now. Everyone, let's walk the walk. Thank you.
What I think about is, in addition to the previous speakers, what I want to point out is that today is about marching for the future. So we want to remember the past and how our voices have been silenced, and as our contributions have tried to be erased, that yes, we want to make sure we stop Asian hate. But that's a pretty low bar, don't you think? We want to make sure that as we move forward, that these different organizations that are representing our voices have a platform to speak, and make sure that our very contributions and our stories of survival and thrival are recognized, are celebrated, and are talked about. Because ultimately, as we think about how we make sure that the history doesn't repeat itself, we have got to think about where we're marching towards. What is that vision for our future? Because for so many years, the model minority has been that myth that literally says, go ahead and work hard, and as long as you know your place, everything is good. But as soon as you try to step out, then these are the kind of history that you can be reminded of that might happen to you. You might be expelled, because in the end of the day, we're not sure that it's okay for you to be as successful as you'd like to be. So here's the thing that I'm super excited about, and that is all of the groups that are here today marching for our future, all of the leaders here that have made that pledge to stand with us, and frankly, all of our white colleagues who are here with us as allies and hopefully co-conspirators as we move forward towards a future where Chinese, Asians, everyone has that voice and the ability to truly have liberty and justice, and I would say success for all. Thank you.
I am actually gonna give my remarks in English though, so thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. When Martha Lee asked me to speak, one of the things she really emphasized for us being here today, 136-year commemoration of Chinese expulsion, was to try to take and harness some of our darkest hours and set a course for a brighter future. And I think trying to look to what Chinese expulsion meant for so many of our families is really boils down to pretty simple. I mean, how much more explicit could a law be to say that we don't belong? To be for an entire group of people to say you're not welcome here. And the result of that is years and years and generations of building the foundation of a feeling of being a perpetual foreigner in your own country. The sense of not ever fully feeling like you belong. Now, many of you know I grew up in Spokane in the 80s, and I had the experience that a lot of people of color, Chinese Americans had in communities that are predominantly white, where you have one foot in your Chinese heritage and culture and another foot in your public-facing day in, day out. And part of that is that you are encouraged to assimilate and try to be comfortable by not being different, by being part of the dominant culture. But the reality of that and the insidious nature of that is that 140 years later, that sentiment still
is just underneath the surface of everyday interactions that we have. And as a result of it, we are still fighting the fight to be seen, to be heard, for our voices to be loud, for us to be clear that we are here and we matter and we belong. Now, I know Governor Locke has heard me mention this before, but every time I appear in public with him, I do want to, again, it is just remarkable and historic, his achievements and what he accomplished and what he means for our Chinese community. So I just want to acknowledge that again. I mean, I remember growing up, 1996, my dad told me Gary Locke was Chinese and running for governor. I thought he was joking. I couldn't even believe it. You know, but he probably doesn't realize how much his story has inspired me and my own career in politics and government. But his story and his family and what he has faced, the racism and the challenges and barriers that he's had to break, that is the tie that binds all of us together, that shared experience of feeling like you don't belong. But that's why it's so important that we have the CID, we have the Asian Weekly, we have the International Examiner, we have the Wing Luke Museum, that we can celebrate our accomplishments and our successes. Because the repeated reminder of what we can do together individually and as a community is what reinforces the most important message of the day, that we do belong. And we are part of the foundation that we're building for future generations so that no kid should feel embarrassed or to have to feel like they can't embrace their own culture and background and have to hide who they are. So today we reinforce, I think, what we've been talking about as all these speakers have said. That we cannot let the darkest hours of our past dictate our future. And as such, this is what reinforces for us that we take what we remember and this energy and the unity that we have to grow a better future for all of us. Thank you, and let's march!
I'm the youngest sister of Wing Luke that the museum is named after. Ron Chu and I stood here 36 years ago when we had the first march and rally to recognize the expulsion of Chinese from Seattle. It was organized by prominent leader Ben Wu, and Ron Chu has a book, and he has a picture standing here at Hing Hay Park at that first rally, 1986, the anniversary, the 100th anniversary of the expulsion from Chinese. And we marched down Jackson Street to the docks, and we shot off firecrackers and acknowledged the courage and resiliency of the Chinese in Seattle. 25 years later, 2011, we stood here again, and I organized the second rally in March to honor the Chinese that were driven from Seattle. One day, I asked my father Lung Sing Luke, was active in the community, in the Tongs, in the Luke Family Association, and I asked him, what happened when the Chinese were driven out? Do you know anything about that? He says, yes, there was a Luke uncle, but he did not have to go. And I thought, oh my gosh, what happened? You know, were there weapons? Did he stand off? And he says, no. The Luke uncle did not have to leave Seattle because he was the mayor's houseboy. And I thought, wow, the power of politics, the politics of power. And so my clan, my family, stays connected to this issue, and indeed it's been a long road. We still have a long way to march, and as we organize the 2011 expulsion march, I recognize that the Chinese were gathered, brought down to the docks to be expelled. So I organized a reverse march. We gathered at the docks, marched into Chinatown through the Chinese gate and up to the Nieuwenhuis Museum. And we printed signs, and I painted some signs, and my favorite sign I painted was USA, here to stay. By happenstance, today at 2 o'clock, the Nieuwenhuis Museum is holding a webinar. We have been working with CACA, Chinese American Citizens Alliance, to create a sculpture, a legacy art project that would mark the expulsion of the Chinese from Seattle. And we are holding that webinar at 2 o'clock today. We will make a recording so that you can see the artist Stuart Wong, his design for the sculpture. And you can see Doug Chin and me speaking about the history and about the significance. And that particular art sculpture is very, very strategic because it will represent a reminder to the citizens of Seattle to support civic action, civil rights, fairness, people of color, so that this sort of thing does not happen again. The second importance of this sculpture is that there are important lessons that we need to build into the education system, because Seattle Chinese have very significant role in Seattle's history. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm having back problem. Thank you. What I want to point out is that Seattle's unwritten history and the Chinese is very, very significant. Seattle labor brokers were the people who sent workers up to Alaska canneries for years. My father-in-law was sent up as a foreman to the Alaska canneries, Frank F. Can. He was sent because he spoke 6 Chinese dialects, and he was the peacekeeper if any of the Chinese workers got into dispute from the different tongs. And so again, my family is closely connected to the history of what's happened here. Seattle's Chinese were very significantly different from what happened in Tacoma. In Tacoma, the crowds burned down every single business and dwelling with Chinese. In Seattle, that did not happen. In Seattle, the Chinese were money lenders. They lend the city money for construction. They helped construct Jackson Street. They helped dig out the canal between Lake Washington and Puget Sound. That's now the Ballard Locks. There are significant educational lessons that need to be done, need to be written, and need to be remembered. At this moment, I want to call upon the younger leaders in the crowd here. I turned 80 years old. I will continue to help whatever efforts are made in terms of preserving that legacy sculpture project, the lessons that are there for citizens, the education lessons that are there. And so I need the younger generations to step up. We need your youth, we need your energy, we need your ideas, we need your leadership to continue this lesson so that Chinese and other groups of color, Asian, blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, that they will continue to have equitable chance of civic duty, civic support, to be treated fairly. And so we need the youth, all right? And we need to do that because USA, we're here to stay.
Fellow Chinese Americans, thank you all the VIP, the guests to come today. And I will just here thank you everybody, especially our community, our leaders, and our fellow Chinese Americans. There's no Taiwan Chinese Americans, no Malaysia Chinese Americans, no mainland Chinese Americans. There's only American Chinese here. Thank you so much. And we don't, no matter you liberal, conservative, you live wherever you are, we need united. We need united. Stop Asia hate. Stop Asia hate. Let me introduce our national president, Taipei. Wrap it up.
So we can have all the elected officials and organizing members over here. Yeah. A picture or anything. I don't even think I can do it. Okay, I'll be the last. Hello, Seattle. What a beautiful crowd. My name is Haipei Xu, president of United Chinese American, or UCA, a national coalition that organized this rally and march together with many other Asian American, Chinese American organizations. And I'll be very, very